My name is Cassandra Hale 32, and I can tell you the exact second my engagement began to unravel. It happened late on a Thursday night while my fiancé, Brandon Cole, was in the shower. His phone sat on the dresser, still charging from earlier, and mine buzzed with a message from an account I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something about the timing felt wrong. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was exhaustion. But I opened it. The message was brief. Thought you should see this, followed by a link. I hesitated, considered every possibility from spam to malware, but the uneasy tug in my chest overpowered my caution. I clicked. A subscription site loaded one similar to OnlyFans, but more curated, more boutique feeling. And then I saw him. Brandon, smiling at the camera with a soft, affectionate expression he usually reserved for me. His page was called Your Boyfriend B, and the bio promised personalized voice notes, emotional support, daily check-ins, and authentic connection for a premium monthly price. I stared at the numbers, $2,000 per subscriber, 43 subscribers total, and an income chart that nearly made me drop my phone, $86,000 a month. My hands went cold. I scrolled through preview clips, recognizing the lighting. In our apartment, the shirts he wore at home, even the edge of our couch. Videos of him murmuring good morning, telling some faceless subscriber he'd missed hearing her voice, asking how her day had gone. He was selling tenderness, selling intimacy, selling the same emotional closeness he gave me, except repackaged and multiplied for whoever paid the highest tier. The shower turned off. Panic shot through me, and I locked my phone just before Brandon walked out, a towel around his waist, water still dripping down his arms. He smiled, relaxed and warm, the same smile I had watched him sell for thousands of dollars. "You okay?" he asked. "You look tired." I nodded because it was the only thing I could manage. He kissed my forehead, grabbed his phone, and immediately started typing, his expression softening into that same practiced warmth I now realized wasn't meant for me alone. It struck me then how easily I had believed it was. I barely slept. Brandon drifted off without a worry in the world, while I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment where I'd brushed off little inconsistencies, the vague brand meetings, the nights he'd asked for privacy to shoot content, the sudden boosts in income he never fully explained. I had always tried to be supportive. I had helped him set up ring lights, bought him equipment, believed every explanation he offered, and all the while he had been running a secret boyfriend experience empire behind my back. The next morning, he left early, calling it a busy day for content creation. The moment the door shut, I reopened the link, created a fake email, paid for the cheapest tier, and dug deeper. It was worse than I'd imagined. Months of emotional role-play, flirtation, voice messages, and intimate videos clearly made in our home. He'd been cultivating 43 individual relationships at once, all while planning a wedding with me. 3 years together, 8 months engaged, 4 months away from a wedding I had been excited for. And now I was staring at undeniable proof that the man I loved had been living a double life from the beginning. For the first time since opening the link, the shock dissolved enough for the anger to burn through. I needed answers. But more importantly, I needed the truth, whatever it cost. I didn't confront Brandon immediately. I wanted to. God, I wanted to storm into the living room the moment he came home and demand explanations for every video, every message, every lie he'd crafted so intimately for women he'd never even met. But part of me needed to see his real reactions, not the polished on-screen persona he performed for money. So I waited. On Saturday morning, I finally got my moment. Brandon was sitting on the couch with his laptop typing quickly, the soft glow of the screen reflecting in his eyes. When I stepped into the room, he jumped slightly, then casually minimized the window with a flick of his fingers, pretending it was no big deal. "What are you working on?" I asked. He didn't look at me right away. "Just editing some stuff for Instagram. Brand collabs." It was almost insulting how effortlessly he lied. I walked closer. My voice was steady, which surprised me. "Instagram, huh?" "Yeah," he said, shrugging, giving me that easy smile that used to melt me, but now made my stomach twist. I pulled out my phone, opened the subscription page I had memorized by then, and held it in front of him. "Which account were you editing?" "This one." His whole body went rigid. The shift was instantaneous, like someone had flipped a switch inside him. He closed the laptop slowly, then stood up and straightened his posture as if taller meant more control. "I can explain," he muttered. "Please do," I said, because I wanted to hear the version he'd try to sell me. "It's a business," he began, lifting his chin. "It's content, that's all. You're telling women you miss them. You're sending them voice notes in bed. You're having emotional conversations with them. You sell the experience of being their boyfriend for $2,000 a month. He flinched, just barely, then forced a scoff. You're being dramatic. No, Brandon, I'm being accurate. He ran a hand through his hair. This is what creators do. It's emotional engagement. It's like acting. It's not acting when the women think it's real, I shot back. And it's not business when you've been lying to me every step of the way. His jaw tightened. I didn't lie. You lied every time you said you were meeting with brands. You lied every time you minimized your screen when I walked in. You lied whenever you told me you didn't have consistent income yet. And you lied when you let me pay for the entire wedding because you were waiting on a brand payment. He went pale, then defensive. So what, you're mad? Because I make more money. Because I found a way to be successful. Successful, I repeated. You make nearly $1 million a year pretending to be in relationships with other women. And you kept every part of that a secret from the person you're about to marry. You're twisting this, he snapped. You're judging me because I'm good at what I do. No, Brandon, I'm judging you because you built your entire life with me on a lie. He stepped forward, frustration sharpening his features. Look, if you can't handle my career, maybe. I can't handle dishonesty, I interrupted. And that's all I've gotten from you. His lips parted, but nothing came out. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to apologize. Then the moment passed. His expression hardened again, like he'd rather be indignant than accountable. I realized then that this argument wasn't about his job. It was about his belief that everything he did was justified because it benefited him. He didn't think he owed me honesty. I grabbed my keys. Where are you going? He demanded. I need space, I said. And you're not going to give me the truth while you're still trying to defend your lies. Cass, wait. But I was already out the door. 2 hours later, I was sitting on my friend Kevin's couch. He listened quietly as I told him everything, every video, every message, every dollar amount that still made my head spin. When I finished, he exhaled slowly and shook his head. Cassandra, you have to call off the wedding. I know, I whispered. And the worst part, he let you pay for everything. I paid every deposit I said, every invoice, every plan. Kevin stared at me stunned. He's pulling in $86,000 a month, and you paid for the wedding. The weight of it hit me again. My throat tightened. Yeah. Kevin didn't respond right away. He set down his drink, leaned forward, and spoke with a seriousness I rarely heard from him. You can't marry someone who lies to you on that scale. This isn't just a mistake. It's who he is. I nodded slowly. The truth hurt, but it also cut through the fog in my mind. By the time I left Kevin's apartment that night, my decision was final. The wedding was off. Canceling a wedding is much less dramatic than movies make it seem. There's no tearful montage or symbolic throwing of rings into the ocean. It's a series of boring, painful phone calls to vendors who don't care about heartbreak, only about cancellation policies. By Monday morning, I had made 12 calls. The venue kept the full deposit. The caterer kept everything. The photographer refunded 60%. The florist kept half. The DJ was the only one who didn't make me want to scream. He sent the entire deposit back with a kind message about wishing me better days. When the dust settled, I'd lost just under $9,000. I stared at the spreadsheet on my laptop, the numbers blurring for a moment before snapping back into cold clarity. Those deposits had been paid from my savings, my work bonuses, my careful budgeting, the money I'd been proud to contribute to the wedding Brandon claimed he wanted so badly. He hadn't paid a single cent. The realization stung more now that everything was falling apart. Not because of the money itself, but because of the sheer audacity of someone earning nearly $1 million a year, insisting I pick up every bill. Brandon didn't contact me the first day, or the second. Then on Wednesday, he showed up at Kevin's apartment, red-eyed frantic, and wearing the sweatshirt I'd bought him for his last birthday. Kevin took one look at him through the peephole and muttered, "Great. The actor has arrived." Brandon stepped inside before I could say anything. "Cass, we need to talk." "I don't think we do," I replied. He ignored that. "We can work this out. You blindsided me. Calling off the wedding like that." "I blindsided you," I repeated. "Brandon, you ran an entire secret boyfriend-for-hire business behind my back for 3 years." He flinched but recovered quickly. "I told you, it's just a job." "No, it's a lie you monetized." His voice rose. "I did what I had to do. And you knew I wanted to build my career before settling into something traditional. You're being dramatic and controlling and—" Kevin cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Controlling. She found out her fiancé was virtually dating 43 women, for money." Brandon shot him a glare. "This isn't your business." Unfortunately for you, it became mine when she moved into my guest room because you couldn't tell the truth if it was printed on your face. I held up a hand before Brandon exploded. Brandon, I'm done. I'm not marrying you. He stared at me for several long, tense seconds. The desperation drained from his face, replaced by something colder, offended pride. You're really going to throw everything away because you don't understand my work. I'm throwing away a marriage built on lies. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, he looked like the man I had loved, confused, hurt, unsure. But then the defensiveness returned, snapping his posture straight again. Fine, he said, if that's how you want it. He grabbed his keys and walked toward the door. Then he paused, turned, and said the one sentence that confirmed I'd made the right decision. I expect you to return my half of the wedding deposits. Kevin choked. I actually blinked in disbelief. You're half Brandon, you didn't pay anything. I was going to, he snapped, but you canceled everything before I could. So now you want money back that you never spent. It's only fair. It's delusional, Kevin muttered. Brandon lifted his chin. If you don't give me what you owe me, I'll get a lawyer involved. That was the moment I realized he didn't just lie easily, he weaponized lies. Not just with strangers paying for scripted affection, but with the person standing beside him at the altar. I stepped back. Do whatever you want, Brandon. I'm not paying you a cent. His jaw clenched. This isn't over. It is, I replied. It was over the moment you sold I Miss You for $2,000 a month. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. It was his mother. She sounded breathless, distressed, confused. Cassandra, sweetheart, Brandon says you canceled the wedding. What happened? He won't tell me anything. I swallowed hard. Did he ever mention the business he runs, the real one? She paused. He said it was brand partnerships, social media sponsorships. Is there something else? So I told her. All of it. The secret subscription account, the fake relationships, the money, the lies, the years of deception. By the time I finished, she was silent on the other end of the line. Oh my God, she whispered. I had no idea. Cassandra, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he's been doing this. And he let you pay for the entire wedding. Yes, I don't know what to say. This is unacceptable. If he owes you money, we'll pay you back. That's not necessary, I said. It is, she insisted softly, and I'll be talking to him. We ended the call and I sat on Kevin's couch for a long time afterwards, staring at nothing. The hurt was still fresh, but something new was forming beneath it, a strange, quiet relief. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't closure. It was clarity. Brandon's life was built on selling illusions, and for 3 years, I had been one of them. Brandon didn't stay quiet for long. After our last conversation, he went dark for 3 days. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive Instagram stories. For a brief, naive moment, I thought maybe he had finally accepted what happened. Maybe he was licking his wounds in private like any normal person would. I should have known better. On day 4, he showed up at my apartment. He knocked with the kind of impatience that told me he wasn't there to reconcile, he was there to demand something. I opened the door, halfway blocking the entrance with my shoulder. He pushed his sunglasses onto his head and exhaled sharply, as though I had inconvenienced him by existing. We need to talk about the deposits, he said. I stared at him for a long second. What about them? I want my half back. Your half of what, Brandon? You didn't pay a single invoice. I was planning to, he snapped. You canceled everything before I could. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity was so staggering, I couldn't process it any other way. Show me proof of payment. Anything. A bank statement, a screenshot, a text, one receipt. He crossed his arms. I don't need to prove anything. It's common sense. We were getting married. We agreed to split the costs. You agreed, I said, and then you didn't pay. That isn't a contribution, that's wishful thinking. His frustration sharpened into anger. This is financial abuse. The words were so absurd I felt myself go still. He pulled out his phone and started recording. You're refusing to give me back the money I invested in our wedding. I'm documenting this. I pulled my phone out, too, held it right back at him and spoke calmly. Brandon, tell the camera exactly how much you contributed. Name one thing you paid for. Go ahead. He lowered his phone almost instantly. His eyes narrowed. This isn't over. It is, I said simply and closed the door. That should have been the end of it. But Brandon was not the type to let go. He was the type to escalate. It started that night. My inbox flooded with messages from random accounts, women, asking if I was the reason Brandon had gone offline, if I was hurting him, if I knew how much he cared about them. One message in particular stood out, a long, detailed ramble from a woman who claimed she'd been with Brandon for nearly 2 years and was worried he was pulling away because of me. I read it twice. Then I responded with the truth. Brandon is not your boyfriend. His name is Brandon Cole. He is my ex-fiancé. We were together for 3 years and engaged for 8 months. He runs a paid boyfriend experience business. I'm sorry he misled you. I didn't hear back from her, but an hour later Brandon called me. What the hell did you do? He screamed the moment I picked up. I answered honestly, I said. She deserved the truth. You're sabotaging my business. You're ruining my life. Do you know how hard I've worked to build what I have? By lying to people, I said. By lying to me. I'm losing subscribers, Cassandra. Then maybe they deserve to know you weren't available romantically. You had no right. I'm going to sue you for tortious interference. Go ahead, I replied. Explain to a judge how your career depends on pretending to date dozens of women while hiding your engagement. He hung up, and 10 seconds later, Kevin called. Hey, just checking, did you poke the bear? A little, I admitted. Kevin snorted. Well, he's having a meltdown on Instagram. He posted this long thing about online harassment from toxic exes. He didn't name you, but yeah, he definitely wants people to assume it's your fault. I sighed. Of course he does. Over the next few days, I watched the fallout through the periphery screenshots. Kevin sent me vague posts. Brandon made messages from confused women who finally began to piece together the truth. The subscriber I'd messaged must have talked, because within 48 hours, several forums were buzzing with threads about Brandon's boyfriend-for-hire scam. Women began comparing notes. The unique messages were identical. The personal videos were recycled. The exclusive voice notes were reused across dozens of subscribers. The facade cracked all at once, and the pieces fell fast. Brandon's subscriber count dropped publicly from 43 to 30, then 22, then 16. By the end of the week, he had 12 left. He tried to fight it, posted motivational quotes about not letting haters bring you down, uploaded teary-eyed stories about being misunderstood, even attempted to paint himself as a victim of cyberbullying from someone who couldn't handle his career. But the women weren't stupid. Once the first crack appeared, the entire image he'd built began to collapse. Kevin texted me, "Congrats. You didn't just break the engagement, you broke the franchise." I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't even feel triumphant. Mostly I felt tired of being lied to, tired of cleaning up someone else's mess, tired of watching women fall for the same soft-eyed performance that had once convinced me. But beneath the exhaustion, something else was taking shape. Relief. Because as Brandon's empire crumbled, so did the last remnants of doubt inside me. There was no version of this man I could have built a life with. Not when lies came as naturally to him as breathing. And the worst part, he still wasn't finished. Brandon's downfall wasn't dramatic at first. It was quiet, a slow unraveling that looked almost subtle from the outside. But it gathered momentum fast, the way a loose thread becomes a rip, becomes a tear, becomes a garment falling apart in your hands. The first major break came from one of his former subscribers, the same woman I had messaged. She posted a detailed account of their relationship on a forum, every message he'd ever sent her, every reassurance he'd given, every "I miss you" video. She had replayed like it meant something unique. She attached screenshots, dozens of them, and she pointed out painfully and specifically how she'd discovered Brandon had sent those exact phrases, gestures, and emojis to multiple women. Her thread lit up in hours. More women joined in, more screenshots, more stories about how they believed they had a deeper connection with him, more realizations that the man they thought they were confiding in was using a script. Brandon tried to stay ahead of the fallout by rebranding. He changed his username, then changed platforms entirely hoping for a fresh start. But the internet is relentless. Someone always recognized him. Someone always linked the new account to the old one. Anywhere he tried to rebuild, someone followed with evidence of his previous lies. Within 2 weeks, his subscriber count dropped to single digits. The money dried up almost instantly. The sponsored brand deals vanished. His carefully curated reputation shattered. And because his expensive lifestyle had been propped up by deception rather than stability, everything collapsed underneath him. The fancy downtown loft he'd bragged about suddenly became too pricey. He couldn't sustain the payments. He had no savings because he'd spent his earnings as quickly as they came in designer clothes, luxury dinners, trips. He never invited me on because they were brand networking opportunities. There was something grotesquely poetic about watching the same lies he'd fed me now circling back to bite him in the throat. During this period, his mother reached out again. She sounded exhausted, humiliated on his behalf, but also angry. Cassandra, I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed. He's been lying to everyone. Friends, family, you, even himself. I didn't know what to say. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. It was more like watching a slow-motion car crash. You're horrified, but you can't change the outcome. Then she said something that caught me off guard. And about the wedding expenses, I'd like to reimburse you. It was wrong of him to let you carry all of that. I resisted at first, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. A week later, she transferred the full $9,000. I used it to pay off my car. It felt surreal, peaceful, necessary. The same day I deposited the check, Brandon texted me for the first time since his meltdown. Brandon, you know none of this would have happened if you hadn't interfered. You didn't understand my entrepreneurial spirit. You never supported my success. You ruined everything. I stared at the message for a long time. In the past, I might have tried to reason with him, explain myself, seek closure. But now the words felt hollow, ridiculous, almost comical. I didn't reply. 2 hours later, I got another text, not from him, but from the subscriber I'd told the truth to. She thanked me. She told me she'd spent nearly $20,000 over 2 years believing Brandon cared for her. She felt stupid, manipulated, and embarrassed, but she also said she was finally free. My message, she said, had been the wake-up call she needed to walk away. I sat with that message for a long time. It didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. In a strange way, helping someone else escape the web Brandon had spun made me feel like something good had come from all of this. And still the largest piece of closure was something quieter, something internal. I slept through the night without waking in a panic. I made breakfast without feeling nauseous. I laughed at something Kevin said and didn't have to fake it. The weight Brandon had placed on my life, slowly, subtly, over years, had finally lifted. And even though the fallout was still rippling outward, even though people were still messaging me with fragments of what they'd discovered, I finally felt like the chaos wasn't mine anymore. Brandon's double life was collapsing, but mine was finally beginning. In the weeks after Brandon's downfall, something strange happened. My life, which had been a constant storm of panic, confusion, and emotional turbulence, began settling into a rhythm so calm it felt foreign. I kept waiting for another blow-up, another crisis, another message exposing a new piece of deception. But nothing came. For the first time in years, there was silence, real silence, the kind that lets you finally hear your own thoughts again. I moved the last of my things out of Kevin's guest room and into a small apartment of my own on the edge of the city. It wasn't fancy. It didn't have floor-to-ceiling windows, or a concierge desk, or a rooftop gym like Brandon's loft. But it was mine. Every part of it, every plate, every pillow, every quiet morning. That first week alone, I slept better than I had in months. I also started therapy, something I should have done years ago, but didn't realize I needed until everything fell apart. Sitting across from a stranger and trying to explain how my fiancé had run a high-end emotional scam for nearly $1 million a year was surreal at first. But the therapist didn't flinch. She nodded, asked thoughtful questions, and helped me unpack the part of myself that had tolerated so many red flags out of love, or loyalty, or fear of being alone. She also pointed out something that shifted everything inside me. When someone's entire livelihood depends on lying, they can't turn that off at home. Not consistently, and not forever. It was the first time I fully accepted that none of this had been my failure. Brandon's dishonesty wasn't something I could have fixed by loving him better or supporting him more. It was built into the foundation of who he was. About a month after everything collapsed, I went on my first date. A friend of Kevin's had introduced me to a librarian named Marcus Quiet, grounded, charming, in a way that wasn't performative. He didn't raise any alarms in my mind, mostly because he didn't seem to be hiding anything. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't try to charm me. He just listened, made me laugh, and let me take the lead. We didn't dive into anything serious right away. I needed time, space, and he seemed to understand that instinctively. Sometimes he'd talk about books or the latest chaos at the library. Sometimes we'd just walk in quiet pockets of the city and talk about nothing important. And for once, nothing felt like a performance. Kevin, of course, treated the whole thing like a sitcom. The universe is giving you a soft reboot, he'd say, raising a beer. New season, new cast, way fewer villains. He wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, updates about Brandon trickled in indirectly. Not from him, the only time he reached out was a long text accusing me of destroying his entrepreneurial vision. I deleted it without reading past the second line. but through mutual friends, whispers floated around. His loft was gone. He'd moved back home to his mother's house. He was trying to launch new accounts, but the internet kept discovering them. And whenever he posted anywhere new, someone inevitably commented something like, "Is this another boyfriend experience scam?" His name had become shorthand for someone who faked intimacy for money. And while I didn't enjoy watching someone implode, I also knew he was living the consequence of his choices, not mine. Life has a way of circling back with truth eventually. On what would have been our wedding weekend, Kevin insisted we go somewhere, anywhere, not to celebrate, but to reclaim the date. We drove down the coast with the windows down and the music loud enough to bury any memory that tried to surface. We camped on a quiet beach, watched the sun drop below the water, and let the night erase something heavy in both of us. On that trip, I realized something important. I was free. Truly free. Not just from Brandon's lies, but from the version of myself who had tolerated them. A few days later, I got a message from the woman I'd told the truth to the subscriber who'd spent nearly $20,000 believing Brandon loved her. She wrote that she had left therapy feeling lighter, stronger, and grateful that someone had disrupted the illusion she'd fallen into. She said she hoped I was healing too. It was one of those rare moments where something good comes out of something terrible. And when I think back on everything, the betrayal, the lies, the unraveling, it no longer feels like a nightmare. It feels like a turning point, a necessary collapse to make space for something healthier, more honest, more grounded. If I've learned anything, it's this. When someone builds their entire world on pretending to love strangers, they eventually forget how to love the people who are real. And if you ignore your instincts long enough, they stop whispering and start screaming. But if you listen, really listen, you can save yourself long before the damage becomes permanent. Brandon taught me that honesty isn't optional. Trust isn't negotiable, and love that has to be purchased isn't love at all. And as for me, I'm still learning, still healing, but I now know my worth. I know what real